Hi everyone. My name is Yanya Viskovich, and I have been working in cybersecurity for the past 17 years from various different angles. Started out prosecuting cybercrime and then eventually moved to advising organisations on how to protect themselves from cyber risks and data breaches and comply with the laws and regulatory standards, and then now helping organisations mitigate the human risk factors in cybersecurity. In the course of working in cybersecurity and data protection, I had a burnout, and in trying to make lemonade out of the lemons that life had dealt me, I decided to raise awareness about what I realised was a really big issue in our industry, which is the significant rates of burnout amongst cybersecurity professionals. And I really got to discover that because as part of my treatment, I eventually went to hospital, spent 2 months in a burnout treatment centre, and one thing that I found absolutely eye-opening in the course of that was the number of information security professionals that were in this burnout treatment program. And this was during the pandemic, when I would have expected that the majority of the people in the program might have been frontline healthcare workers. So it piqued my interest and I decided to look into it more, and what I found was really eye-opening. Off the back of, and so maybe just to speak about some of the eye-opening statistics I discovered was that in some studies have shown that 60 to 80% of our cybersecurity profession are at the verge of burnout or burning out. Gartner predicted earlier this year that by 2025, a quarter of all cybersecurity leaders may leave the profession entirely because of the stress and the workplace stress and the burnout involved. And so in trying to raise awareness about this subject, I realised we also really need to be having interdisciplinary discussions to deal with it. So I made a TED talk about why burnout culture is actually a cyber risk for organisations. And off the back of that, I was introduced to Kevin Fielder, and also in the course of my work around burnout in the cybersecurity profession, I also met Parmiter. And so we decided, having been introduced, that we should raise awareness about this interdisciplinary topic. So I shall hand over maybe to you, Eve, first to introduce yourself.
Great. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. I am a civilian. That's the first thing to say. So all this cyber stuff is fascinating, and I get about 1 in every 7 words. So my title is a clinical traumatologist. So I'm a clinical traumatologist. I'm a consultant. I'm a coach. I focus on power, potential, and performance, and the stuff that gets in the way, like the misuse and abuse of power and the wear and tear of what we choose to do, which includes workplace burnout. Kevin.
Oh, thank you. So I guess I've talked about this a couple of times now, but I kind of come from similar backgrounds to Yanya in terms of having had some challenges, so not so much burnout, but I went through kind of a phase of what people talk about quite often of becoming quite lonely and depressed, and then a lot of things went wrong in my life in terms of a terrible marriage and not having any friends and that kind of thing. And so part of my recovery from that and getting back to being me again has been things like health and well-being, coaching other people, looking at the importance of kind of your tribe around you and people around you and that kind of thing. So I've got a huge amount of focus on kind of human wellness, and both from medical and physical side, mental and physical side of things, and working with people on that. Coach some fighters and other stuff as well outside of my kind of job, as it were. So really passionate about that kind of thing, and how being more healthy and resilient as people and helping your teams be more healthy and resilient fundamentally dramatically increases the amount of stress you can handle. So even when you are in a stressful environment, or your organisation may not be perfect, or there's a breach or whatever else, or just dealing with the constant worry of could there be a breach, that kind of thing, I'm really kind of trying to help people understand the benefits of looking after themselves and building that tribe and having things outside of work to take their mind off things. And yeah, like Yanya said, we have a joint friend who kind of introduced us and said, like, hey, you guys should probably have a chat. And that's kind of sprung up to us. Let's start talking about this and how we can improve health and well-being and organisational health. And, from whatever point of view it is, I think healthy people and resilient people will make better decisions, make you more secure, and turn up to work more often, right? So you get more productivity and everything else. There's huge benefits to organisations and people from thinking about this stuff. And yeah, I'm not a professional, so evil keep us honest with some definitions of what all this stuff actually means, and then we'll butcher the terminology for the rest of the talk.
All right, time for my soapbox. Yeah. So I think the first soapbox is about the term burnout. We use it because it sounds like it feels, and that can be a bit confusing in wondering what are we actually talking about. So I'm going to take us from the top. I promise I'm not going to send you all to sleep. If anyone starts snoring, you let me know. I'll get up, I'll do a tap dance, I'll get everyone awake again. Okay, so you've probably heard the World Health Organization's terminology around burnout. If you've heard anything about burnout at all, it says that it's caused by chronic workplace stress that's not been successfully managed. See me stepping up onto my soapbox. Okay, we're going to make that more useful to us, and we're going to take the word stress and we're going to split it to show cause and effect, right? The stressors and the stress effects, and I shall work backwards from the stress effects. We end up feeling exhausted, cynical, and ineffective. And what that sounds like coming from a human rather than a textbook is, I don't have the energy, I don't have the skills, and even if I did, what's the point? I don't think I can do this anymore. And given the statistics that have been said, I'm sure there are people in this room who've experienced that. I've also experienced that in my profession. For the immediate transfer, for what that looks like if I think about the staff that you train for cybersecurity, if someone's dealing or enduring the experience of burnout, then they are going to be less likely to be able to engage, retain, and do justice to your training. They are more likely to be prone to errors, less likely to notice errors or indicators of a phishing email, for example. They are going to be less likely to report errors as trust is low, and more likely to take shortcuts as energy is low. So it doesn't sound like it's a good thing as an addition to the threat landscape. Now, final bit of the soapbox, just so we know what we're talking about. In the literature, there are 6 factors, which in this audience I shall call vectors, in the workplace, to be aware of. Now, I'm going to say what they are and a question for each of them, just so you can start thinking, all right, so how does this apply to me, my experience, my workplace? What might my colleagues be experiencing along these lines? First thing, workload. What a surprise, right? So workload. How well matched are you with the volume, variety, and type of work you do? Next, choice and control. How much power do you have over how, when, and where you do your work and the resources you can allocate to it? Reward and recognition. How much acknowledgement do you get for the value you bring, the attacks you prevent, and what it takes you to do it? Social connection. How's the camaraderie? Or at least the civility? Fairness. What about the transparency, the accountability, and justice? Like, how much protection do you get when things go wrong? Finally, values. Is what's important to you and what's important to your organization well aligned in practice, which can include, how's your risk tolerance? What's your stance on insurance or paying ransoms? All right, so I'll set that up. That's a bit of a structure. And I'll bat it over to the other 2 professionals.
You talked about how this impacts decision-making, and I just wanted to share, to make this perhaps even more real for the industry we're in. So I have heard of an instance where a CISO's company had suffered a significant cyber incident, and he already was on sick leave due to burnout, and the team was attempting to respond to the incident, and he was called in, or at least called to provide information that only he was aware of to help them deal with the incident, and because of his state was not able to. So this has very real-life impacts on not just, and I don't want to minimize the impact on the individual, of course, but also if we are going to do something about it, understanding that this also has impacts on how organizations respond to cyber incidents and how resilient their crisis teams are before actually managing a crisis that we're seeing today.
Yeah, so I think we probably all agree it's a real thing, right, and really important. But one of the things we wanted to do was actually start talking about some of the ways to improve this.
Yes.
Right. So we have a lot of talks where we talk about the problem, and I'm sure any of you on LinkedIn will see a million posts about burnout and stress, and right. And that's great. But what do we do to improve things? And I think it's one of the areas where kind of myself and Yanya are quite complementary. So I very much come at it from a kind of a people, as in the person and the team, and how we build resilient humans kind of point of view. And Yanya's got a lot of great ideas on the organisation, how important the organisational culture is and stuff. And that's kind of what we want to start moving into now. So for me, I'll kind of jump on my soapbox for a couple of minutes from the human, the individual side of things. So as a person, you're able to deal with a certain amount of stress, right? And depending on your lifestyle choices, that amount of stress will vary that you can cope with. So if you have a terrible diet and poor sleep and poor social connections and just generally aren't looking after yourself, and maybe a stressful life as well and things outside of work that are all stressful, you're going to be minimising the amount of stress you can cope with before you get ill, and also maximising potentially the amount of stress you're under due to like lifestyle choices and things. So turning that round, I did a whole talk on this, but I'll try and keep it fairly short. If you start thinking about how you look after yourself and how you promote wellness within your team, you can make a huge difference to how much stress you can handle. So when there is that incident or the M&A or the new release or all of them happen in the same month, you'll be better prepared and your team will be better prepared to handle that. I don't know how many points I'm going to end up with, but fundamentally, try and eat reasonably well. It doesn't mean being obsessed with it, but prepare your own food, have a decent diet, do some exercise. I love exercise, I'm training all the time, but you don't have to love it. Get outside, get some walking in, do a little, if you're able to, do some lifting of heavy things, and that's comparatively heavy for you, not heavy compared to like some power lifter, but lifting, fundamentally being strong makes you healthier for your entire life. Do some cardiovascular stuff. Doesn't have to be insane. Walking, cycling, swimming, whatever else. Reiterate the getting outside point. Even though we're busy, one of the things I really try and push with my team is do some meetings that are walking meetings, right? So whether you're working from home or in the office, if you're having a one-to-one with someone, it works better with small meetings rather than big meetings, but one-to-ones, those kind of things. If you don't need to be in front of a screen and you're just having catch-up, let's say, hey, even if you're on the phone, let's go out and walk together and do it and have that call on the phone, but outside, getting some fresh air and some movement in for yourself. Try and get some sleep. Now, I know that's easier said than done because it's the easy one to ditch. I've got a 6-month-old baby and a job and as a CISO, so trust me, I get the not sleeping thing, but try and get sleep and rest as well. And all of these things build up to make you more resilient. And then the final two are have some outside hobbies and things to do that take your mind off it. Because I know one of the things we were talking about before that we got on stage was the fact that one of the things that makes security not unique, but in a field of, like with emergency service or whatever else, you never know when you're going to get that call. So it's very easy to worry all of the time because it's not, you might work 9 to 5, but at 2 a.m. on a Sunday, you could have a breach, right? And especially if you're a bit more senior, you might just be on call all the time. So you're on call 24/7 and you can constantly start worrying and let ease. So have some things outside of work that really take your mind off it. And aligned to that, have some close friends outside of work and part. It doesn't have to be like, we don't all want to get married and have kids and a family, but cultivate some close friendships. And the two often go together. So guys especially have a tendency to not talk about things and not meet your friends, even your close friends. How often do you go to your friend, let's go and meet to have a chat? It doesn't happen that often. But if it's, let's go and meet and go to gym, or I think I can't remember if it's New Zealand or Australia, there's a whole organisation where they build sheds, right? But men's sheds, yeah, there we go. And it's not about building the shed, it's about getting men together to do a hobby, and then they start talking about the important stuff and all the things they're worried about while they're hammering a shed together, whatever. And I'm sure it applies to women as well, but obviously can only talk as a man because I am one. And statistically, men seem much more rubbish at maintaining friendships through life. There's a real thing about lonely men in their 30s and 40s because they've put their whole life into their job and their family or whatever, and not nurtured friendships because we're not as good at that. Statistically, not as I'm broad strokes here, but so don't hit me for that. But statistically, that is the thing, right? So try and do those things. And the close emotional relationships with people I can't overstate the importance. I got to a place where I didn't have those and my life was in a terrible state. Now I have some really, really close friends that are totally there for us, each other, and it's made such a fundamental difference. So all of those little things, I'm not saying go out and only eat perfect food and train 5 times a week and everything else, but just make little changes, try and get outside more, try and be more healthy, try and nurture some friendships and stuff, and it will genuinely make a thing. And my final point before I stop filibustering, sorry, I just keep thinking of new things, is demonstrate that to your team. So if you're part of a team, or especially if you run teams, demonstrate that behaviour, because what the leader does or the manager does is what people think is acceptable. So if you're sat at your desk 24/7 and always working and always there and always stressed, your team thinks that's what's expected. So I have public open meetings in my diary that everyone in the company can read, with things like picking up my daughter from school. So do those things. If you've got kids or you've got family commitments or whatever else, have them in your diary, demonstrate those behaviours so the rest of your team know that getting outside or doing family errands or whatever else, as long as they get their job done, is totally acceptable, right? Lead by example, because then you'll help other people make those changes without having to tell them to go and do it. They'll just see that as the way you should behave.
You do that in your calendar, I think you were telling me.
Yeah.
Like you actually put into your work calendar that all your colleagues can see that you're actually going to do. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah,
Maybe
so
that's something that we can pick up from.
Yeah, so it's just that kind of leading by example. So I literally have in my diary the days I have my daughter pick her up from school. This has Molly school in the mornings and evenings and that kind of thing. So it's just really publicly, I'm going to be out for a couple of hours, and I make it longer than it needs to be, so she gets some quality time with me as well, because that's really important when you're busy, right? But yeah, those things, just leading by example, and it could be something else. It could be that you do lunchtime gym, so you might start a bit early and have a 2-hour lunch to go to gym. Whatever it is that is your thing to make your peace, but be public about it, be open about it. Another great example I had given to me was like, I'm generally fairly good at dealing with stress in situations, but sometimes after a difficult discussion or a team meeting, I'll actually say, that was quite hard work for me. Let's have a little break and a cup of tea or whatever, because then it shows other people can say that. So I've actually had some people in my team say to me after saying, actually, can we have a little break in that? So you've made it okay for them to say, could we have a quick break when you've got a team day or a hard session? And someone who is a bit more introverted or isn't so good at the kind of public speaking thing will then be able to feel that they can say when they need to, can I take a moment? And that's totally fine, because you've led that by example. So I think that example thing can't be overstated, especially if you're in like a leadership position.
Yes, to all of that. And my next perfectly placed soapbox, because broad statement, but one I believe is true. You can't solve systemic problems at the level of individual symptoms. So the amount of time the individual is blamed for whatever it is they can't handle. Yes, do all of that so that you are better able to handle things. You can do all of that and still be on the receiving end of impossible workloads, false urgency, perverse incentives, the bullying and harassment, I've been reading a little bit about the SolarWinds CISO SEC situation. You can do as much yoga as you like. Eat all the blueberries, have all the bubble baths. That's not actually going to make that situation, or many situations around burnout and the causes of it, any better. So we have to go upstream, which you were doing anyway, because you're talking about how to represent it to the team. And I'm going to hand it over to you after I just say one more thing about the calendar. Some people don't want to tell you what they're doing in their personal lives, because actually it's none of our business as the manager. So I applaud what you do with that, because it is rare and terrible to say, but it's also rare for men to say, this is open in my calendar, I'm going to go pick up my kid. For people who don't have kids, they can feel like, I have to be the one that stays behind. I am the one that works late, because I apparently don't have a life that's as valuable as anyone else's. So if someone in your team says, no, I am stopping at 5 today, or I am flexi-timing this, unless you've got a really valid reason to ask them what it's about, don't ask them to put it in their calendar. Oh, righty then. So,
I'm really glad you mentioned the importance of systemic issues and structural issues that come at this, and Kevin and I have had a bunch of discussions about this too, and I've been like, yeah, okay, the meditation, the working out at the gym, it's all great and it's all important, and it can surely help you deal with life stresses. But as Eve just mentioned, it doesn't actually reduce your workload, and it also, I think, overlooks something that we frequently overlook, and that is the impact of processes in our organisation. How many times have we been expected to do something, follow a security process or follow some other process in our organisation that just builds frustration, it adds to our workload? And so when we go upstream and we look at what can organizations do to mitigate both the problem, which is causing burnout at a significant rate amongst cybersecurity professionals, but also because burnout and stress increases error rates, actually contributes to the likelihood that you will play a part in creating a cyber incident. And I say play a part because we know about defense in depth here. It's super important to understand that organizations play a critical role here, and they can do various things to make this better. And so you talked about some of the things you can do in your team and as leaders, and I absolutely agree there are things we can do there. From an organizational perspective, so definitely look at processes. And one way that we can do that, and bringing this back to cybersecurity specifically, I would actually encourage organizations to do as many simulation exercises and tabletops as you can to rehearse how you and your team are going to respond in a cyber incident, in a crisis. Because that will show you what processes are actually redundant and creating more work on top of what you've already got to manage. They'll show you what processes need to be streamlined, what you don't have in place already, and how your team is communicating in a crisis situation. And maybe it'll highlight things as well like, hey, we don't have a backup system in place. So many of you probably work in companies where you can only afford to have maybe 1 or 2 people on your security teams or your SOC teams. And that's perfectly understandable. But we need to be thinking creatively about how can we make sure that our teams are going to be able to perform at the level that they need to when a crisis happens. If your team is already burnt out and feeling extremely under pressure before a crisis hits, imagine how that crisis is going to be managed. And the reality is that cyber incidents happen. It's a matter of when, not if. But those incidents don't need to be crises. They can simply be incidents that are managed. And I think a lot of this turns on how well an organisation works internally, the processes that are involved, how we work as team leaders and so forth. I'm conscious of time, and we did want to leave time for audience Q&A. Did you want to say one thing before we open it up to the audience? You look like you're busting to say something.
To make sure that people have things to go away with.
Yeah.
So, because I don't know what the time is, can we each give like 5 minutes?
5 minutes.
All
5
right.
minutes, okay.
Okay.
So I've already given my suggestions, which is tabletops and simulation exercises to show you what you're doing with your processes and communication.
I gave a long list earlier. I won't rehash it, but yeah, all the kind of health and well-being and kind of social connection stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here we go. All right, final soapbox. The things that are proven to be really effective: professional satisfaction. Know what you're doing, why you're doing it, recognize the good work that you do. If no one else is telling you, tell yourself. When you get someone telling you, keep it in a folder. It sounds a bit ridiculous, but have a folder of the emails, of the text messages, print it out, stick it on your fridge, know the difference that you're making. It matters, because it matters to you, it matters to the person next to you. Getting in real-time positive feedback from someone who understands how hard it is to do what you do, that really matters. Don't wait for the annual review. Don't wait for the performance review or whatever, the quarterly chat with your person. The more immediate you can make it, the better it is for that satisfaction. When we're working at the edges of our skill sets, that can be extremely stressful, as we know, right? Especially when our responsibility is up here and the control that we have might be all the way down here. Keep training, keep developing the skills, because we had the exhaustion, we had the cynicism, and we had the sense of inefficacy. So you need to evidence efficacy and keep building your capacity. That's what you can do. And if you have the budget to pay for your people to do it, pay for them to do it and give them time off, proper time off. Proper time off to do it. Okay.
I think we're over time already, but yeah, did you want to?
No, just very quickly, if we haven't got time for Q&A, I think we totally failed to get any sports analogies in, but you left me an opening. So prior to this, we were talking about Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune Do, and the whole one of the big premises of that is to get rid of anything extraneous. So it was like, it doesn't matter if it's Thai boxing or Tai Chi or Wing Chun or whatever else. just take the bits that work from every single thing and make it as lean and fast and as possible, which, just to your point, getting that martial arts kind of like sports thing in there, make your processes as lean as possible. Don't have any kind of like hanging on to history or this is how we've done it. Look at other people and learn to do things as leanly and efficiently as possible.
I think we actually, we have 1, 2 questions.
Maybe 3.
We have 3, yep.
David Gadd from Tech Cyber. The Gartner report was really concerning about how many people are going to be leaving the industry. Do you think the next gen CISOs and leaders are better prepared?
Okay, so the great question, are the next generation of CISOs and cyber leaders better prepared than the ones that are currently burning out? My fear is not, because for the reasons that we talked about. And one of the keys that I think is really the key to unlocking a lot of these issues is psychological safety. We talked about, you heard Tim Ward speak earlier about the importance of making people feel like they can put up their hand and admit to an honest mistake. And this is key to a positive security culture. Psychological safety also happens to be, I think, one of the keys to resolving a lot of these issues that we have in our profession around burnout culture. If we feel safe enough to have those conversations with our leaders when we need them to say, hey, listen, this is not sustainable, I do believe that the environment that enables us to have those conversations is the same environment that we want to encourage end users to feel like they can be enabled and empowered in a positive security culture. Do you have a differing view about whether the next generation is better equipped?
So I think, obviously, conversations like this help in terms of people being more aware of how to deal with things and that we can be more open about stress and things. And I think the other thing that will help isn't necessarily the leaders that are coming up, but the industry maturing. So one of the challenges security has is it's kind of had a history of being sat in the corner, and to Eve's point, we are accountable or responsible for breaches in any organisation, but we're not necessarily having the power to get the issues fixed that would stop the breach happening, right? Because there's other people control that. So as it matures and we get kind of accreditation and become more of an organised thing that has more structure around it, I think that will help, because it inherently become more part of what organisation does, like the CFO or the CRO or whatever else. So as you get more structure into security, that's going to help people, because you'll have more. It'll be much more clear what our accountabilities are and how to deliver those, whereas now it's kind of a bit wishy-washy at times.
And I probably shouldn't have been so negative and pessimistic, because I do think that I have seen at conferences this issue, this topic being more and more on conference agendas. So awareness is increasing, and of course, the more we talk about something, the more we can deal with it.
I'm just going to say we'll loiter afterwards. I know there are more questions, but we have other speakers to be aware of and not to take their time. So shall we...
What do you think? Do we have time for those two questions, the 2 hands that went up, or do you want us to take it?
We've got time for one more question.
Okay. So I think it was done here.
Make it short and sweet.
Short question, long answer, right?
Lean like our processes.
So Cameron Parker, I come from the reinsurance industry, but I'm here, I guess, just to support you. I've just been through a really big project, and the feedback I had was, Cam, we've got this. You need to lean on us more. So I guess the only thing I didn't hear that much from the audience, from the panel, was I think you just need to find a way to ask for help, because it really, really makes a big difference. But I think you guys did a cracking job. Brilliant session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So, time has come to an end. Eve, Yana, Kevin, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very
For
much.
exposing.
Thank you.
Cheers.